Hey guys, how you doing today? Unfortunately, we're unable to meet together tonight, but I still had a few thoughts that I wanted to be able to share with you. And in the coming weeks, I would love to be able to, on a regular basis, share a couple thoughts with you guys on Wednesday nights, so you guys still have something to feed into and invest in your own heart spiritually. So I want to look at a story of a guy whose name is Paul. And before we read this passage, Paul is talking about how he feels like he has this thorn in his side. He has this burden or this difficulty in his life. And we don't really know what that is, but we know it bothers him. And he's asked God to take it away from him multiple times. And over again, God almost says no. And this is what it says. This is found in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, starting in verse 9. It says this: "But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong.'" Sometimes we have this idea that in order for God to move in our lives, for God to make a difference where we are, that we feel like our lives need to be smooth sailing, that everything about us needs to be perfect, we need to be doing the right things, we need to be in the right places at the right time. And those things are helpful for sure, but what we find here and what Paul is telling us is that what God can do is not dependent on the situation or the circumstances that we are in, or even who we are. Paul is saying that God's power is perfect in our weakness. He almost describes it in a way, it's like almost like it's God coming through in the fourth quarter almost. And God, no matter what's going on around us, God's gonna come through. And that's how Paul's describing it. So in this season of uncertainty and anxiety and maybe a little bit of fear, I want you to know that God can still move and work in your life, because it's not about what's surrounding us. It's not even about what you do to respond to that, but it's about God's power. And if you're in a moment or a season of weakness, God's coming through in the fourth quarter, and His power is made perfect in that, and He does some of His best work in our weaknesses. Because if we're honest, we're all weak. We all have struggles, sins, and flaws, but God always comes through in the end. So here's my action step and my encouragement for you. What are the things in your life in this season that you're concerned about, fearful about, or anxious about? I would encourage and challenge you to take those things and write them down. And then once a day, every single day this week, take those things and go to God with them. Pray over them, pray about them. Talk to God, say, "God, we are weak in this area. We need your power to come through." Because here's what I know is true. God cares about us more than we know, and He wants to do a work inside of our lives, but we have to be willing to bring those things to Him. So what could it look like, instead of being fearful and anxious this week, if we brought those fears and worries to God, a God who is even stronger in our weakness?
And that's a wrap.
Cool.